Okay, we can start slowly. I mean, people will come. So good evening, everybody, or good morning, or good afternoon. We have a lot of participants from all over the world. So for some there is morning, for some it's afternoon, and for some it's evening. My name is Vedran Korušić, and I will be your moderator for today's session. I'm from Croatia. I'm a trainer and a supervisor here, and I'm also a part of this team that is running the Psychodrama.World. It's it's a digital platform that we developed in FEPTO to share articles, to encourage article writing on psychodrama, social drama, sociometry in the most broadest sense. So we are running this site where you can get articles, you can read articles that are free, that are open access. And this year we also started this journal club, which is also another idea how to bridge this gap between the authors and the community, so to say. So we have this journal club twice a month where we discuss articles and we invite the authors of the articles to share their knowledge and to discuss. So yeah, this is the main idea. So we already had four journal clubs, and this is the fifth one. And we decided in Poland, in FEPTO, that the next four ones will be dedicated to a specific topic. Concretely, it will be dedicated to working with psychodrama with children and youth. So this is the first journal club dedicated to this topic. And I was thinking how to introduce this topic or to get into this. And I thought that maybe we could start with working with youth or adolescents because it's much easier, so to say, than to go into the working with children because they are really like specific because of development needs and everything. And I was thinking, who can I invite, because at least for my perspective, there are not so many people who are like working with adolescents and have a lot of experience and write about it, except Mario, that I at least know. And it was, yeah, Mario came to my mind and said, okay, I will do it with Mario because he has 3 decades of experience working with youth and especially working in different cultures, which I also think that's very important because part of our community here in Europe, which is the FEPTO, is more or less the same culture, and there are so many nuances and specifics when we get outside of our culture and work with different style, different cultural roles. Yeah, so let me introduce then Mario to you. Mario, the stage is yours. Maybe you can share a little bit who you are or your professional background, and maybe just say a little bit how come that you are working 3 decades with youth. What is the motivation for it? So to say, we can start with that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about why I love working with youth. In terms of who I am, what I do, blah, 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 blah. That to me is less important than why I do what I do. Although I think it's important culturally, and this is something that you'll see something in the article if you've read it. I think it's important when a new person comes into an established community, even if that established community isn't, a regular thing where all of you meet regularly. You're part of FEPCO. I'm not. So who is this guy? Maybe you've heard of me before, maybe you haven't. But I'm going to ask Ina, who is somebody I've known for quite a while and I've worked with, if you would say something to the group about why they should pay attention to me. rather than go to sleep or, do their knitting while I'm talking. Why did you come, and why do you recommend me to your colleagues?
I love to see you, Mario. I love to see you work. I think you're a creative person, and I think you're also very structured. So I think you can explain the things that you do and the things that work. With TSM, you can present that very in a structured way. And I like your creativity. Mario is a creative, spontaneous man.
Thank you, Ina, and thank you for letting me call on your spontaneity. I didn't tell Ina I was going to do this ahead of time, but I think it's important in any group that we work with to acknowledge the fact that sociometry, our understanding of the sociometry of the group, is what allows us to really get to where we might want to go with the group. And that it's important right from the start to build the sociometry between the leaders and the group members and within the group members. And this is one of the things that makes me so excited about working with adolescents. Many, many years ago, decades ago, it's hard to believe it was decades, but it was, when I was in graduate school, I was taking a course in group psychotherapy, and the teacher said, when you work with adults, you usually have to work with them individually to get them to a place where they can benefit from working in a group. When you work with teenagers, most often you're better off starting with a group experience to get them to a point where they might be able to do individual work. And one of the things that I love about working with teenagers is that they are a group animal. What I believe is true is that when we are babies and infants, we have a certain array of developmental tasks to accomplish. And if we are in the presence of good enough parents and good enough family and good enough community, we meet those developmental challenges and move into life in a way that allows us to be resilient, to bounce back from adversity, to deal with the ups and downs of life. And for those individuals who don't have that opportunity to grow up in the good enough family or the good enough community, all of those developmental challenges that are met as children are revisited as adolescent. Only it's the peer group that becomes the place that needs to be good enough rather than the family. As people are moving away, and I don't like the term individuation because I think it only tells half the picture. Jean Baker Miller, who's one of the founders of feminist psychology, talked about how our role as we get older is to move into more mature relationship. So that's what I see as the general guiding principle for adolescents. They are at a time in their lives when their neurological development allows them to move out of black and white thinking, to be able to consider consequences, where the opportunity to develop a sense of safety and trust in the world, if that hadn't been developed before, becomes available. And it's through the group, it's through the peer group that those things happen. And one of the difficulties is that many peer groups are not particularly healthy. So they go from a not good enough family environment to a not good enough peer group environment. And so if we can offer groups that allow students to make healthy connections and work in a way that allows them to develop a sense of trust, to develop a sense of discernment, being able to judge whether someone is authentic or not. Teenagers are very good at that. Then this gives them the opportunity to do what I love. One of my favorite terms from when I was in grad school was the corrective psychosocial emotional experience. So that's what adolescence provides. It's the opportunity to have a corrective experience that allows me to move into my adulthood in a way that is perhaps more intact and more regulated. So, that's kind of the why. And also, adolescents just love working in action. There are some who aren't, and those are not usually the ones who come into groups. Although I had the distinction and the pleasure of working only with voluntary groups for many years. So kids were there because they wanted to be there. But even when they don't want to be there, I just want to give you two examples. One was a student who his mother and his aunt was a friend of mine, thought it would be good for him to be in the group that I was running. And they brought him on the first day of the group. His aunt was a good friend of mine. He wouldn't get out of the car. And I said, let me talk to him. So I went over and I talked to the kid, let's call him Joe. I said, Joe, so I know your aunt really well. I hardly know your mom. I know they're forcing you to come. How does that feel? It sucks. I said, yeah, I can imagine that. But listen, let's make a deal. Come into the group today, see what it's about. You don't have to do anything. You can just sit there if you want. At the end of the day, if you decide you don't want to be part of the group, I'll tell your mother and your aunt to leave you alone and we'll be done. And if by chance you find that, maybe this might be interesting for you, then you're welcome to stay. So he said, yeah, okay. He came to the group that day and was in our program for 5 years because he got to choose to be there. So even when it's not a voluntary group, it's important to let the choice be there. Another example, and this is one of the reasons I love working with adolescents because they're so authentic. I was working in a program in New Hampshire, a school especially set up for students with emotional handicaps, kids who are coded. And I had worked in the school many times before. I knew a number of the kids there, but there were some new kids. And I came in one day to this workshop I was going to do, and there were some kids there that I didn't know. And they were kind of grumbling about having to be there. And I said, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love being in this group? 10 is, I can't think of any place I'd rather be than be here in this group with Mario. And 1 is, I would rather you put bamboo shoots under my fingernails than have to be here. And so I asked people to hold up the number of fingers with how they felt. And the kids that I knew were holding up 9s and 10s. This one girl held up a 0. And I said, well, okay, so if you really don't want to be here, there's a nice table over there. You can go crawl under the table and go to sleep. We won't disturb you as long as you don't disturb us. And that's fine. You don't have to participate. So she, got up and in a huff went under the table. And as the group went on, she started moving further and further out from under the table and kind of looking at what was going on. And then at one point, she got up from under the table, sat down, and joined the group. So that's my important guideline number 1 in working with adolescents. Let them know that they have a choice. They don't have a choice to disrupt. They don't have a choice to hurt somebody or hurt themselves when they're with you. But if they're there against their will, they can sit in the corner and be quiet. And 9 times out of 10, they join in. So Vedran, I don't want to do all the talking here. You and I talked when we were warming up for this about the concept of those things which are kind of generic, and that I think is one of them. Giving them permission to participate and to choose to participate. And then we talked about some of the specifics. So could you frame that question a little bit so we can go into that a bit more?
Yeah, when we were preparing for this meeting, suddenly actually 2 terms came up. It was like, what are the what are the universal needs, so to say, of the adolescents, and what are the cultural needs, you know? And so the question is basically, from your experience working with different cultures, what would you say to maybe summarize, you know, because adolescence is very, I mean, if we say like pre-adolescence, we have like development theory, which is very concrete about what are the challenges, what are the needs, but adolescence is usually somehow blank, so to say, or we are just letting young people to grow up, so to say. So what are the universal needs from your point of view of adolescence, and maybe then to bridge it with different cultures, and how is it then reflected in different cultures, and how to work
Yeah,
with it?
I think that's a good sequencing. So if we look at the universal needs of adolescence, again, I want to go back to that concept of developing more mature relationship. So during adolescence, we're moving from a place of dependence on our family into a place of codependence and then independence. And one of the ways that we succeed as an independent or codependent co-relationship adult is by having healthy relationships. And it's also true that if you look at the sequence between adolescence, back when I was an adolescent, adolescence was considered to be from 12 to 20. Once you hit 13, you're an adolescent. Once you hit 20, you're an adult. And that's no longer the way we define adolescence. We define adolescence from the onset of puberty, which for some kids is as young as 10 and 11 now. That was very rare when I was a teenager, but not so rare now that puberty begins around 10 or 11 or 12. And the reason that is important as a kickoff point is because not only is the body changing tremendously physically and hormonally, but it's also changing tremendously neurobiologically. So this is one of those universals. When young people hit adolescence, their nervous systems go into a huge rebuilding, and billions of new neurons are created, and pathways are explored, and some of the pathways stay and some of the pathways get sloughed off. So this is one of the reasons why there is so much flexibility within adolescents. Even if they had a really horrible childhood, there's the opportunity to make new neural connections. It's not just about, you know, getting rid of the bad stuff and bringing in good stuff, but there's untapped neural potential there that we can support in being created well. So that's really important. And the reason, when I first discovered Therapeutic Spiral Model, which is just a particular focus of doing psychodrama that looks at how to work safely with survivors of trauma, was the original intention of a Therapeutic Spiral Model. But when I was introduced to it and saw the model, I said, wait a minute, this is a map for how to work with adolescents. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to share with you a nice visual of something that we call in Therapeutic Spiral, the trauma survivor's internal role atom. So this is a drawing, that a graphic that was done by one of our students in Singapore. Her name is Hong Kang. All right, so this, if we look at it here, I'm just moving pictures out of the way so I can see the whole thing. Do the same. If you're not familiar with Zoom, if you click on the little sidebar, you can move it to be able to see things. So what Therapeutic Spiral does is it creates this map, and the map is also available in two-dimensional form, but this form is kind of nice, of what we call people's internal role atom. Moreno is well known for creating the social atom, by which I can explore my relationship. You know, I put myself in the middle and I put Ina a few steps to the left, and we have a strong positive connection. So I draw a strong line, and I might put in the date that Ina and I met, and I put in another person and they're further away, and I get a sense of who I am in relationship to others around me. The therapeutic spiral internal role atom is a way of looking at the various roles within ourselves, our inner roles, our internal roles, and how we can categorize them. So if you look at the left-hand side where it says strengths, protagonist, BD, CD, manager of defenses, C, agent, we call that side the prescriptive roles. And in therapeutic spiral, the theory is that unless you put these prescriptive roles in place, you cannot safely go into the trauma material without potentially re-traumatizing. But if we do put these prescriptive roles in place, then when we go into the trauma material, which is here in the middle, defenses and all the strategies we've developed for coping with our trauma, our internalized perpetrator, our abandoning authority, our internalized victim, that if all of our prescriptive roles are in place, then we can come here and work with trauma. And what emerges is our roles of post-traumatic growth, the sleeping, awakening child, the ultimate authority, the good enough parent. So what I discovered when I first was introduced to this trauma survivor's internal role atom is that these roles here over on the side are the roles that are really important for adolescents to develop. So I'm going to stop the share for a moment, and I'm going to ask us to everybody stand up. You can't, if you can stand up. If you have a standing disability, you can do the seated, but standing up is a good thing, gives us a chance to stretch. So there are three categories of roles within the trauma survivor's internal role atom. In the prescriptive roles. One of these are roles of observation. So what I'm going to ask you to do, and this may feel a little uncomfortable for you, but get your face as close to the camera as possible. All right, this is the role of observation that we sometimes call the client role, being able to get in and look really carefully at stuff. All right, I can see people's eyes. I'm so close. I don't know if anybody has shoulders, but I can really see your eyes. So up close, I can learn certain things. It's also important, now back away from the camera. It's also important to be able to look at things from a distance and be able to see the big picture. From here, I can see that in one screen, there's several people on one camera. I didn't know that before. I'm getting new information stepping back. So this is one category of observation, getting in close, stepping back. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. Another category is called the category of strengths. And there's three kinds of strengths that we talk about, and we're going to explore this further as well. But I want you to do this with me. Just put your hands gently on your chest or on your shoulders, a little tapping, a little connecting with yourself. These are what we call personal strengths. These are strengths that I have inside me. My ability to organize, I can do that in my sleep. My ability to tap dance, my ability to listen well, right? These are all personal strengths. Now, reach your hands out to either side, stretch a little from side to side. This is the gesture we use for interpersonal strengths. These are the people that I'm connected to, or the strengths that connect me to people. So Ina is an interpersonal strength for me. Vedran is an interpersonal strength for me. They're both people I've worked with before, I feel safe with. In this particular meeting, I know them better than anybody else. So I see them as people that help me stay grounded. Also, an interpersonal strength. Some people like to describe things like being a caring friend is an interpersonal strength. With teenagers, it gets confusing. So I tend to say anything that's about me is a personal strength. And being a good friend is a personal strength. Ina and Vedran are my interpersonal strengths. So I tend to use people as interpersonal strengths, other things as consider as personal. Not everybody teaches that way. So if you happen to encounter other people, they may describe it differently. The third kind of strength, and shake your hands in the air like alleluia arms, we call these transpersonal strengths. And these are things that are greater than self. You can sit if you want, you can stay standing and dancing if that is good for you. So transpersonal strengths are things like my connection to my culture and my heritage, my connection to the nature, right? And this area of transpersonal strengths is going to be very important when we start talking about the cultural differences. So within the prescriptive roles, we've got that observation, ability to see and to back up. We've got a restoration, personal strength, interpersonal, transpersonal. And then the last area that we've got is containment, the ability to be present with our feelings without dissociating, without being triggered, to be able to respond instead of react. So when I discover these things, the thing about the observation, we also teach that it's not just about being able to step back, but being able to step back without judging. So the clinical term that's used in therapeutic spiral is the observing ego. Our colleague Linda Ciatola has introduced the term the compassionate witness, which is a term that I usually use with teenagers because it's less clinical, it's a little more user-friendly, and it's easier to translate into other languages. So that compassionate witness is the ability to step back and look at myself without judging, with love and care, and say, okay, this is who I am right now. May not be who I want to be, but if I can get an accurate assessment of who I am right now, I can make choices of how I want to move forward. And so this is one major thing that adolescents learn to do. I learned to explore. I learned to get as close to a problem as I need to find out. I learned how to back up and be away from it. So this is a basic adolescent developmental task, to learn how to take in information and use the wonderful things that are developing in my neocortex to be able to perceive and explore information in a new way that I wasn't able to do when I was 7 years old. This idea of strengths, this is another area that changes a lot across culture. Many American kids, although not all, if you ask them to name a strength, they can come up with at least one or two. In many Asian cultures, it's not okay to talk about your strengths. It's considered a not good thing. So we're going to talk a little bit about that later, about how to work with, and even for some kids who've been abused and neglected often have difficulty identifying strengths. So there's a way that we can work to help bring in those personal strengths. People can usually identify their interpersonal strengths. I know who my friends are. And the transpersonal area, this is something that I've discovered in many countries, that young people are really in a place of transpersonal curiosity, whether they are considering whether the things they were taught in church as children still hold for them, whether they are exploring a connection to nature. I worked with a number of young people in America who had indigenous roots and were really interested in exploring what their particular native culture, what were the elements of that. So that's really important. The third area, and we're going to come back to each of these things and look at how we put them into action. The third area is about containment, being able to be present with our feelings. and about regulation. So think about it. If you've got a kid 12, 13, 14 years old, and they develop the ability to look at things up closely as well as step back, observe themselves and others without judging, if they're able to identify some personal strengths, the things they're good at, they're able to identify and assess the people around them, they're able to connect to the greater world, whether it's through nature or music or religion or culture, and they're able to have feelings without being overwhelmed by them, they're ready to move into adulthood. So this is why I use that as a framework, and it's also a kind of an easy thing to, an easy thing to present when we're presenting with a group of young people or an individual. If we're working with an individual, what are some of the goals? We can assess, do you need to discover more personal strengths, or do you need to be able to assess how helpful the friends are? Is it an interpersonal issue? So that's kind of the generic. But as I started to mention, in terms of the culture, and my guess is that
Mario,
yes,
just an idea, maybe because it was a lot of information, maybe just to open some space for questions about Sira, just to
yes, great idea. Thank you,
if there are
Vedran.
any questions about this generic, or what is this internal role atom. If there are any questions, this is the place we can discuss a little bit and then move on.
Great, perfect. And I might not see everybody raising a hand or asking for acknowledgement. So Vedran, feel free to call on them, because I
Yeah.
can't see everybody.
So are there any questions, any thoughts, comments that we can maybe open discussion? Yes, Judith.
Yeah, I want to start where you begin with your attitude towards the young people and the choice. I like that attitude very much. I was working with Roma youth in a school, Ambedkar School, which was a second chance gymnasium.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was so interesting because I decided not to regulate their behavior. You see, they could use the iPhone, they could have the hat on, they could whatever, because I thought if it's interesting enough, they will listen. So there was a girl who was lying on her back and playing with her iPhones. And as you told at the beginning, when it started to be interesting, then she was sitting up and looking like this. So that was so deliberating for them, that I'm not coming and say, take off your hat, put away your iPhones, blah, 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 all this. So it made a difference. Just, it's
Yes.
a reflection.
And that's also, thank you for that, Judith, because it brings up, that we think of cultural differences of Asia, America, but there's also cultural differences within any country. And there is a huge cultural difference between those kids who have or who are diagnosed with ADHD and those who don't, those who are neurodivergent in some way and those who aren't. And by giving people permission, I had worked with a lot of kids who were diagnosed with ADHD and who were taking Ritalin during the school day, and they really didn't like doing it. And my norm in our group was, if it's okay with your parents and okay with your doctor that you not take your dose of Ritalin after school, it's okay with me. And you don't have to stay in your seat. If you need to get up and move around while the group is going on, as long as you're not disrupting anybody, that's fine. If you want some drawing paper and you want to sketch while we're doing group, we usually would have clay available so people could do things with their hands. And the whole issue of disruption from kids who weren't able to stay still was a non-issue, because it just allowed them to be how they wanted to be. So thank you for your comment there. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, Joanna.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify something because I'm not sure that I understood on the image that you shared with us. You said that you are kind of separating in three sections. Let's say that first you have the prescriptive roles in place so that you work with trauma, so that you can work then with post-traumatic roles. Is that correct?
Yes, and that is the model for TSM as applied to generally adolescent populations. What I'm saying is that working with teenagers, we focus just on the prescriptive roles. I usually don't go into trauma material because they're too close to it. There's some teenagers I mentioned that I worked with for as many as 5 or 6 years. They stayed in our program even after they graduated from high school. And then we did get into the trauma material. But for the newer students who are just coming into the program, we focus just on observation, come in, come out, see without judging, naming strengths, personal, interpersonal, and transpersonal, and being able to be present, being able to regulate and co-regulate within the group setting.
And the second part of the question, thank you, is that so that when you call, let's say, adolescents, so that you can form a group, it's not that everybody has to declare being traumatized. So either you don't even from scratch that they are traumatized or not, but no matter what, you always work with strengths. I know that because I've read the book Rebels with a Cause, so I can recall this information. It's very clear to me. But when you call adolescents to come to your group, it's not that you know that everybody is traumatized. Everyone, I think, is traumatized in we are. I mean, every person on earth is at some point traumatized in our lives. But you do not start by knowing this because you don't call traumatized kids to come. You just call a group. And then you
it's a group
establish
for anyone who wants to join.
But you start from perspective roles in place so that even traumatized kids can be safe enough to share and move towards post-traumatic roles.
Right. And even those kids who don't come from a history of trauma, they are revisiting those challenges with new neurobiology in place. So even though they may not, it will be easier for them to name their strengths, to observe close and from a distance, but they still need to do it as young adults because the mental capacity for doing those things wasn't present when they were younger.
Thank you.
Yeah, but that's important that, it's not, and, truth to tell, adolescence, even in the best of situations, is by definition a traumatizing event. It has a long-term effect on the nervous system. It causes increased flows of cortisol and oxytocin at different times and causes the body to respond differently. So anything that we do that is considered trauma-informed probably will work with adolescents as well.
Okay, thank you. One more question, and then we can move on. Okay, so no questions. Mario, please continue. You were talking about going into cultural
so now
things,
going
right?
from the specific, going from the general, the generic, to the culturally specific, let's look at this issue of the difficulty with being able to identify and name strengths. So Kate Hudgens, who is one of the creators of Therapeutic Spiral, has worked for many years in mainland China. And when she first got there, she discovered that the normal way that we do things in Therapeutic Spiral and live workshops, we have a bunch of scarves on the ground, and then we create what's called the circle of safety. And so we ask people, pick a scarf to represent a personal strength. And people name the strengths and lay them down in a circle, and we create this nice working space. Well, what she discovered in working in China was that people were very reluctant to name a personal strength. Also, many, many years ago, one of the people who worked with me was working with a group of kids in a nearby town, and they were also having difficulty naming a personal strength, because they thought it was bragging to say something good about yourself. So there are certain cultural acceptance around naming who I am and feeling good about it, and certain cultural prohibitions about it. So what Kim did, and this was really simple, and we use something similar in Bali, is she got a bunch of the index cards, and then she asked kids, okay, so what are some strengths you see in other people? And somebody said, brave. And so she wrote brave on an index card. And someone else said smart. And so for each one, she wrote them down on a big index card. And then as part of the warm-up, she passed the cards around and had people to take a magic marker and put a little picture or a symbol or something that they think of with brave or smart. And she created these floor cards. And then she put the cards down on the floor, and she said, all right, now think about these different strengths that you've seen in other people. Go stand next to the card that has a strength that you think you've at least got a little of. And so people would go and they would find the one that they could at least claim a little bit. And then she would have them talk about why they're claiming this strength, and on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do they think they have it? And then she would have them next go to a card that has a strength that you would like to have more of. And so they did that, and they started playing with the idea of strengths are something that we can develop, or something that we might have a little bit of, even if we're not a champion in that area. And then she did something which is similar to what I did in Bali, which is she had students talk to each other about, so say Hannah is the first student that's, is taking a turn. And I say, okay, so as you look at Hannah and look at these cards we've got at our feet, what are some of these things that you've noticed in Hannah? And so then one student says, well, Hannah, I remember the other day the teacher was really upset about something, and it would have been much easier for you to just be quiet, but you spoke up and explained what was going on. I thought that was really brave. And then Hannah goes, oh, maybe I am a little bit brave. Nice to know. Right? And then by that way, we start giving feedback to each other. What we did in Bali, which worked really beautifully, and these students have been together for their total program year is about 9 months. So they had been together for about 4.5 months when we did this 2-day intensive. But we had them create, they were in small groups. I mentioned in the article that because even though they're learning English, English wasn't their first language. So I would demonstrate something with a translator, and then we had staff from the school who spoke English, but also spoke Balinese and Indonesian, and could use whatever language was appropriate in the small groups. So in the small groups, they took one of the chairs and they put scarves over it and created like a throne, a very special space. And then one by one, they were invited, Ina, come sit in this chair. And then as Ina's sitting in the chair, the rest of the people in the group give her some feedback of strengths we see in her. So Ina, I remember, one of the strengths I've seen in you is how clever you are technologically, and the ability to deal with technology and Zoom and cameras and microphones. I so appreciate that. So Ina takes in this feedback, but then we say, okay, Ina, now you have to claim it. So can you make a statement about how good you are technologically?
I am very smart technology-wise. I'm good with Zoom. I see through a lot of problems and I can manage a lot.
Thank you, Ina. So this is another technique for doing it in which both I can take in as an adolescent, even though maybe I am not in touch with my strengths, I'm more able to hear it from my peers than from my parents who say, "Oh, you're so smart. Yeah, yeah, you don't know." Or from my teachers who say, "But when Vedran says to me, I remember when we were struggling with that math problem and you figured it out, you really are smart." Step one, I'm being recognized. I'm building an interpersonal connection with Vedran as he says that to me. Number two, I'm considering the possibility that maybe I am smart. And then number three, by having the requirement that I then have to say back, yes, Vedran, I am smart. Thank you for seeing that in me. That is, again, building. And this, if you read through the article, the beginning of the article is really boring about all the different elements of resilience and all the research. I hate doing that kind of writing, but I know it's important, so I did it. But the research talks about an internal locus of control is important for resilience. And so by being able to claim strengths and also external connection, by being able to build interpersonal connection with peers, we're building resilience. So these things are not only helping adolescents who've been traumatized or who are now at a new neurological stage of their lives to develop a better sense of who they are as adults, but it's also at the same time building resilience, the ability to bounce back. All right, so these are just a couple of ways of doing that. When it comes to the interpersonal, I think we're going to do a little experiment here. When it comes to the interpersonal, I describe in the article how we used envelopes on which people the first day drew their social atom of people that supported them. And they put little talk bubbles of some of the support that they got. And then we had them write those things on a piece of paper, all those positive things they were claiming. And then on the next day in pencil, they wrote some of the negative messages they got. And then we worked with the positive and negative messages, which they were ready to give back and which they weren't. But what I'd like to do now, I'd like to demonstrate something that is, this is something I also learned from Kate Hudgens for working with young people or people of any age who live within a culture within which it is really, really considered horrible to say anything negative about your parents or about your caregivers. So I need one person who's willing to volunteer to be my student. And I'm going to, and you can, for this activity, let me tell you what the activity is before you volunteer. What we're going to do, this is a 2-chair activity. So whoever is the protagonist, I'm going to ask you to imagine that there are 2 chairs sitting in front of you, or maybe even ask you to find 2 objects in your environment to place down. This one of them represents all the blessings I've gotten from my family, from my culture, from my ancestors. The other represents the baggage. And then we're going to have the opportunity to speak to the blessings, to say thank you for all the good things, and then to also name the baggage and consider that, I don't have to give up the blessings if I'm going to assess the fact that I'm going to let go of some of this baggage. All right. And this was not that, with most American kids I worked with, not too hard for them to tell their parents what they did wrong. But for Asian kids, it certainly was. So for the young people that you work with, this might or might not be important. All right. So who's my volunteer? So again, when we do demonstrations like this, it's more to get a sense of the choreography or the possibilities rather than to go in deeply. If I'm working with an individual, then I usually want to make sure that the last 10 minutes or so of the session are time for bringing the person back into the present moment, for doing some of that assessment that I had you do before I had you step out of your role of 15, of recognizing the importance of balance between the want for adventure and the need for care, all of that. If we're doing it in a group, we need to be really thoughtful about how much the group can tolerate being focused on another person's material for how long. Because this kind of activity is very, very focused. Now, what we could do in a group, instead of having two empty chairs, we could have the protagonist pick someone to be the blessings and pick someone to be the baggage. And then we can put it into more of action. We need to be careful, especially for the person that we pick to play the baggage, to make sure they're de-rolled at the end of the experience so that they're not carrying that message with them, because very likely they're carrying some of those same messages themselves. The messages that hold us back tend to be very common, at least within a culture, they tend to be common among young people. So, and we could also, if we were doing this with a group, we could demonstrate the activity and then have people do it in pairs or threes. If, like I did when I worked in Bali, I had all these wonderful staff people, I could demonstrate the activity with translation, and then they break up and facilitate it with each of the people, in small groups. But you can also, if your group is sophisticated enough, you can teach it to them and have them practice it with each other. Or you can do it, you could do it as, you could have everyone sitting with two chairs in front of them or two objects in front of them, and then do a round of each person gets to say what they want to say to their blessings. And then each person does a round of what they want to say to their baggage. And then we have kind of a group discussion, a sharing, the way we usually do at the end of psychodrama, of how did Vedran's vignette touch mine? How did what he say give me an idea about something that I might want to say? So that we can balance, like if I'm working with a group, I had some students as young as 11 and 12. I wouldn't expect 11 and 12-year-olds to be able to sit and watch one person be the focus of attention for 15 minutes. But in a high school group or a early college age group, they can tolerate that. So you need to think about, what stage they're at in their group. It's also wonderful to work with co-leaders. I usually used to have interns I would work with. So sometimes when we would do activities like this, we would break up into two small groups so that everybody could get a turn. All right. So we talked about one way of being able to identify strengths that we may not be able to name ourselves. This is a way to work with naming some of the difficulties that we've got if we're working with a group that there's a prohibition about talking about your families. It's also really, really, really important for members of the group to know and to commit to the fact that anything that's said within the group stays within the group. So that if, I know Ina's mother, I'm not going to go to Ina's mother and say, you should hear what Ina said about you in group the other day. We need to make sure that's true. We also need to make sure when we're working with minors, I'm assuming this is true in Europe as well as in America, that if as people who are working with with young people. Sorry, Ina, you've got a spot on your nose. I'm trying to wipe off on my computer screen. That there are limits to confidentiality for mental health professionals in America, I'm assuming other places, that if someone reports that they're being hurt by someone, if someone is intending to hurt themselves or intending to hurt someone else, that's not something we can keep confidential. And it's important for the students in the group to know that, to know what the limits of confidentiality are. But one of the things that I would usually do with my groups is I would tell them that not only am I, and we would have meetings with the parents before kids enter the groups, and I would tell them I'm not going to talk with you about anything that happened within this group unless there is a danger. If your child is in danger, I will communicate with you, but otherwise I'm not going to. And I would tell the students, even if one of your teachers happens to say to me, oh, I heard that so-and-so, I heard that Judith is in your group, I will let you know that they said that, even though it's not important. And the first time that I do that in a group where I say, oh, by the way, I ran into your math teacher and they said they were glad to hear you were in the group. Well, why are you telling me that? Because I won't hold information from other people given to me about you without you knowing it. Once the group members know that you're really serious about not talking with anyone else, I had problems within my agency because it was standard operating procedure within the agency that at staff meetings, if one person was working with a client, they were discussed with other people. And I refused to do that. I said, if at a team meeting, you are working individually with one of the kids in my group, I'm happy to talk with them about you, but it has to be with the student's consent. And most of the times the students would say, fine, it's fine if you talk with my individual therapist, but I would only do it with the student's consent. And it's that kind of respect. This goes back to what you were saying before, Judith, that kind of respect that we show the young people, that we really honor them as individuals, and that we really will work with them in a transparent and open and honest way that allows that sense of trust to form. And this is the other piece that I think is really crucial about the work that we do with teenagers. There's a kind of support that young people get from their peers that we can't give them. We can't be their buddy. We can't be their friend. There is an importance of peer contact that only peers can give. And there's a kind of support that we can give them as adults that they can't get from their peers. And this is part of the research on resilience, that one of the factors that increases resilience in young people is having 3 or more caring adults in their lives other than family members who they can relate to, who they can talk to. And the specific thing that we can do, particularly in a group, if we're working with a therapy group, is helping people make meaning from experience. If we look at the little demonstration that we just did, now it's possible that a 15-year-old might be able to make that leap of understanding the importance for balance between safety and adventure. But if at 15, as an adult, you could do that. At 15, maybe you couldn't. So maybe that's something that I can offer. So I might say to that person, so let me check something else. What I'm hearing here is there's this part of you over here that's trying to keep you safe, that gets in the way. There's a part of you that wants adventure, to be able to do stuff, that isn't sure that you're always making good choices. So is there something you can say to that part of yourself about how to find balance? And then they go, oh yeah, balance, that's what I need. And so we help, because that's another one of the developmental needs of adolescence, is learning to make meaning from experience. And we can offer templates for them to do that. right? So I'm going to pause at this point because we've done a lot. We've talked about a lot. And Vedran, I could see on your face you were getting ready to say, let's see if there's any questions or comments.
Yes, I mean, you have given us a lot in this like hour, and I'm looking at time, so I'm thinking how to open some space in these last minutes to get some more questions for you or feedback, and maybe a short sharing at the end.
Great.
So yeah, Iona.
It's more like a comment. I would like to agree with you, Mario, on the fact that I'm a teacher, I'm not a therapist, but I truly believe that yes, peers can give a kind of support that we cannot give, but we can give a support that peers cannot give. But in order to the second, let's say, part of the sentence to be valid, you really have to, I mean, the director or the director of the group, let's say, has to be a member of I think it's a question also. Should be a person that is well known in the community of the kids, or is a trustful member of the society for some of the kids, so that he or she is introduced by some of them. And I saw that you also wrote about this, and I think this is the most important, because when you want to be a role model in a group of adolescents or even kids, because sometimes kids now are adolescents when they are. I mean, I'm a teacher for up to 12 years old kids, but some of them are teenagers already.
Right.
And in order for me to introduce, let's say, that I had me in a group, if I wanted to introduce this kind of perception of balance in their life, I had to be first and foremost a respective adult in the community of the kids, meaning always respectful, always a person that someone can count on, a person that can hear, but also hold her horses, let's say, about being an adult, like adult, do not do this, do not do that. And I really think that this is the most important aspect of running a group like the group that you're talking about.
Absolutely. That
That's
connection
what is
of
called.
building safety.
Sorry, Mario, go ahead.
No, the importance of building that sense of connection and also using the connection of others. I'm remembering a group I did here in Bali where there was a very traumatic event in a school where a kid was almost killed by a stupid backflip off a balcony and missing a swimming pool. And I was working with the kids about it afterwards, and there were only 2 kids in the group who knew me. And I knew this was going to be an intense session. So I said to the 2 kids, would you please tell the rest of the group why they should trust me to do this with them? And it was through their sharing of how they knew me that other people were able to then open up and consider the possibility of trusting me.
Like you are the sociometric leader, like everybody can talk about you even though they do not know you.
Right.
I just
Vedran,
wanted to
did you
say
have a comment?
it's a role of appropriate authority in a way from the TSM,
Right.
you know, how we as a leader be appropriate authority, and that comes usually from experience of building
Right.
trust.
We're the good enough adult who accepts our responsibility to the young people of being a caretaker, of being a support, of being a teacher, of being someone who sets boundaries as well.
Okay, any more comments, questions, sharings? We are slowly getting to the end, so to wrap up.
I thank you, Mario. It was very interesting, and even if I know Kate, I haven't heard you speak before, and it was so exciting for me because I've been working a great deal with youngsters among others, in the Red Cross with groups of people coming, not knowing each other and coming from Afghanistan, for example. So it was very interesting and very useful. And thank you. And I would also like to know about the article. Where is it? Is it in this FEPTO.World group or whatever? You said something about that, Vedran, maybe?
Yes, the article is on our webpage. So if you go to the Psychodrama.World, I will share it in the chat right now, but it is on our webpage.
In the invitation you got, there's the link to the article.
Yeah.
Where?
And now Inanch has written a link, so you have it in a chat.
Okay. And Mario, do you go back to Bali and stay there forever, or is it possible to join you somewhere a little nearer to Europe?
I do live in Bali most of the year. September, October, November, I work in the States. But at other times of the year, I do travel to other places when there's conferences and things going on that are worthwhile. Unfortunately, travel from Bali to certain parts of Europe are very difficult. When Vedran and Ina were part of a conference we did in Croatia recently,
Yeah,
and
I heard about it. Yeah.
Getting to Croatia from Bali was not easy, but getting to London from Bali is no problem. So
Yeah.
depends on where, but I am available for have scarves will travel.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
you work online, Mario. You do a lot of work online.
Yes, that's true. Thank you for that reminder, Ina. Well, Vedran, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to have this opportunity to meet all these folks from your part of the world. I'm very connected in America. I'm very connected in Asia, but there's this whole chunk of the world from England to the other side of India that I don't have too many connections. So now I feel like I've got some new cousins to meet.
Thank you, Mario, and really thank you for all the things you've said and all the energy. I mean, you really got the energy of you keep on going and going and going, and that's so nice to see, and how you are clear in your presentation. It's wonderful to witness this.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Marco, yes,
Yes,
you
thank
have
you, Mario. Thank you, Mario. In your article, you write that you pay attention about the language, not only the English language, but the Indonesian language, Bali language, and so on. And this is one of the important aspects of our job in this moment of in the world. Thank you for this idea and for this job. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thank you for that comment, Marco.
Hey, if nobody else is willing to share something.
I just want to thank you. Ina had right that you are very methodologically and very clear and structured. And even it shows that even small glimpse of the action part, what you are doing, is very useful and very applicable in many other situations, not only with adolescents or children, but even with adults, no matter what the content is. So it's a very easy model and very nice. I like the simplicity. I recognize Zerka at the end of her life. I was trained by her. She used very little scenes or doubling or fast, but very, very, very intimate dialogue sometimes. Made it very specific. and
Yeah, Zerka was my primary trainer as well.
yeah, yeah. And I also like that you asked Joanna, what was in this scene which you will remember. So it is a kind of get up to the cognitive level and learning to learn something out of that. I like that too. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes.
Okay. you look like, okay. Yes, I liked it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Johannes.
Yes, I also would like to thank for this interesting talk. It was very, very nice to listen to you and to hear also about your concepts and your ideas and also the practical part. I would like to also do some advertisement for FEPTO because, you know, psychodrama all over the world, I think there are so many places where psychodrama is done. And for me as a chair for research in FEPTO, and also for a member of the board, I saw that there are several people from the FEPTO board here. I think we can be quite proud of that. We have a good exchange also about these different issues. So Stefan Flegelskamp was here before. He had to leave. He wrote a short note. And I mean, he, together with Milena Mutavcheva, they founded a network group of working with children and also with adolescents. I think it's also something very valuable, and they have 1 or 2 times a year, maybe 2 times a year, they have a meeting. Vedran is very often there and many others too. So I think we should be really using this structure and this network we have. Also this, you know, this journal club, it was an idea of Inanj. Inanj is here. I need to say that, but how important it is that we have this opportunity to come together and to share articles and to discuss. And thanks to those who are coming, like Mario, today, I think we can really enrich our experience. And finally, also, you know, last year we published this book in Springer, which many FEPTO members have contributed to. It's also about psychodrama with children and adolescents. So if you're interested in this, please also use it and share it with others, because it's really important that we build on our rich basis of practice and concepts and theories. So I'm done with my advertisement. So thank you, Mario, for this wonderful presentation. And thank you for Vedran for moderating it, and Inanj for inventing the journal club. I think I can say this on behalf of the FEPTO Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
And speaking about advertising, I want to advertise one thing, and that's the 4th International Conference of Psychodrama with Children and Youth that will happen in Cluj in Romania in September next year. The title is 100 Faces of the Children Psychodrama. So we will send you more information, and probably it will be published also on FEPTO page about this international conference next year. So you are all invited, and to really, especially those who are working with children, to present there and to spread the community.
Okay,
and I see.
If I may add something also, if you're advertising, if you want to know more about TSM, working with TSM, I'm the person for TSM in Europe. So if you're interested in having a training, I'm doing one of the trainings in Romania with Hanna Elan. She's also here. And next year it will be in Switzerland. There will be a training in Switzerland. But if you want to know anything from TSM in Europe, ask me.
Yes, thank you, Ina, for that. And I saw Mimi that she's raising her hand. So Mimi, please.
Hi to everybody, and thank Mario very much. I'm here with a few of my students. They are young psychologists working with adolescents, working in the schools. And we decided to come together to be here on the Zoom. And thank you, Vedran and Marco, for this organization. I think that it is very helpful what you did. And I will advertise FEPTO. And I'm very glad that it's happening here and that Psychodrama.World is so active. Thank you very much to Mario very much.
You're welcome. And the amygdala is my favorite part of the brain. So I
Yes,
see you
me too.
got amygdala name
Yeah.
there for during adolescence, the amygdala swells to 3 times its size. That's why everything is so intense for
Yeah.
adolescence. So let's hear it for the amygdala.
It's the name of the school of psychodrama, Amygdala.
Ah, wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So Mario, last words
never
before
grow
we end.
Last words. I just want to share something that Zerka instilled in us years ago when we were training with her. I think that psychodrama asks us to always be challenging the cultural conserve and always finding what's new, what's to be discovered. And that too often we get stuck and we think we've got it now. So that's one of the things, one of the kinds of energy that I get from adolescence, of always being able to look at things with new eyes. So I invite us to bring our adolescent eyes to everything that we do, whether we're working with adolescents or adults or children, that not to get stuck in the rut of this is the way we do it, but is the way I've been doing it working in this situation. So thank you all, and blessings to you all. Hope that I'll meet you in Europe one day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you, Mario. Bye-bye.
Bye
See
bye.
you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Mario.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you.